at which point the upstream gates can open, allowing boats to continue their journey. The reverse process then allows passage for boats travelling downstream, and the flooding and draining of the lock chamber is simply achieved using the force of gravity. There are no pumps involved. Between the lock and the island, a set of rollers can be seen. These allow users of small boats and skiffs to manually negotiate their passage. The source of the Thames is called Thames Head and is close to Cirencester in the Cotswold Hills in Gloucestershire. It flows downhill following the gradient of the land, and for the first 140 miles it passes through 45 of these lock and weir systems, spaced along this section which is known as the Upper Thames. The Upper Thames drops in elevation by about 300 feet, and these lock and weir systems allow the drop to occur as a series of controlled steps of a few feet each time, and there is no tidal effect on the Upper Thames. Boffin is the 36th lock from the source, and there are another 9 downstream of here, the last of these being at Teddington, west of London. Beyond Teddington, the remaining 75 miles of the Thames becomes tidal as it flows through London and on into the North Sea. This gives a total length of 215 miles. The weir ahead of us is a bit like a dam spanning the main channel, and it is this which does the main job of controlling the flow and subsequently the level. The lockkeeper does this by raising or lowering the individual gates, usually in response to recent rainfall. Allowing a faster flow during wet weather prevents a build-up in level which can lead to flooding, while in dry weather the weir gates are closed in, holding the water back but maintaining a safe depth for boats to navigate. Indeed, the lockkeepers maintain a chain of communication along the river, keeping the Upper Thames at a more or less constant level throughout the year. Towards the right-hand end of the weir is the salmon ladder, this being a narrow channel divided lengthways by a series of baffles which slow the water down and cause slight backflow, assisting the migrating salmon in their arduous journey to the source of the river. Salmon were successfully reintroduced to the Thames in 1982 after a long absence, and they have become firmly re-established since then. This is mainly due to the cleanliness of the water these days, the Thames in fact being now officially recognised as one of the world's cleanest metropolitan rivers, that is to say one which flows through major towns and cities. This was not always the case though. In the 1800s the river was so badly polluted that it was declared dead in the London area, and that no fish or bird life could survive in or around the water. The smell of the river was unbearable to those who lived or worked near it. Diseases such as typhoid and cholera were rife, and this period was known as the Great Stink. For Londoners, things improved greatly in the 1850s with the building of Joseph Bazalgette's enclosed sewage system, and elsewhere along the river many improvements have been made, and the process continues to this day. The colour of the water is deceptive. Despite looking dirty, the brownish-green tint is caused by naturally occurring sediments and microorganisms. Having turned around, we now embark on the downstream leg of our journey, which will take us to London and then on to the North Sea. And for the same reasons as mentioned before, the journey from here to central London would take in the region of 12 hours. However, we are not limited to the River Thames. In fact, much of England is linked by canals and rivers. The first canals were built by the Romans for the purposes of irrigation, as well as linking navigable rivers. But it was the Industrial Revolution of the 18th and 19th centuries which saw the most significant development due to the need to transport goods around the country, as at this time roads were fairly undeveloped. For instance, at Reading in a suitably sized boat we could turn off the Thames onto the Kennington-Avon Canal and make our way to Bristol, or at Oxford we could branch off onto the Oxford Canal and head north to Birmingham, a city which grew largely as a result of being a hub for several canal and river networks. From Birmingham we could then navigate our way to Liverpool or Manchester. If we were heading downstream as far as Brentford on the western edge of London, we could join the Grand Union Canal, which also heads north and joins the Oxford Canal, leading to Birmingham.
Нормально себя видим. Да, мама тебе даст, если найдешь.
Across the meadows to our left is the village of Eaton Wick, being close to but entirely separate from Eaton itself.
In the distance beyond Eton Wick, some tall factory chimneys are visible. These form part of the Slough Industrial Estate, reckoned to be the largest in Western Europe. The chimneys form part of a power station, next to which is the Mars factory, where amongst many other confectionery items, they're able to produce somewhere in the region of 2 million Mars bars in a day. Slough is a town of some notoriety. The wartime poet Jan Betjeman penned the famous line, "Come friendly bombs and fall on Slough." And in more recent years, the town was used as the backdrop for the comedy series The Office, starring Ricky Gervais and Martin Freeman.
Thank you, I can't count either apparently. Windsor French bake up.
Five.
Yeah, I'm just coming out of the locker.
Brilliant. Loading 3 is all clear. Loading 3.
Thank you.
In the distance ahead of us is the western elevation of Eton College Chapel. This was completed in 1482, almost 34 years after its construction began. The college was founded to provide a free education for 70 boys. As the school grew, more students were allowed to attend, provided that they paid fees and lived in the town outside the college buildings. These students became known as oppidums, from the Latin word oppidum, meaning town. In fact, in those days, the boys were required to speak Latin at all times, risking punishment if they failed to do so. To this day, the college at any time has 70 King's Scholars, as they are known, in honour of their origins. There are also music, foundation and sixth form scholarships, meaning that at any time around 20% of the boys are subject to reduced fees and in some cases no fees at all. The college in fact states that no parents with a talented boy should feel that Eton is necessarily beyond their means, dispelling the myth that only the very wealthy can aspire to sending their sons to Eton. The college has a fond association with King George III, who spent much of his 60-year reign at Windsor Castle and visited Eton often. The Wednesday following Maybank holiday is a celebration in honour of his birthday on the 4th of June and is marked with speeches and a procession of boats on the river. Old Etonians include members of the royal family, most recently Princes William and Harry, and 19 of our Prime Ministers. The small wooden footbridge coming up on our left is Long Bridge, aptly nicknamed the Chinese Bridge due to the 3 arches which are reminiscent of the famous willow pottery pattern. The backwater beyond the bridge is the Cuckoo Weir Stream, and although there is no weir on this stretch of water, it was considered as the location for one, which was subsequently built at Boveney. A little further along this stream is the headquarters of Swan Lifeline, one of several charities along the Thames which care for sick and injured swans. Swans on the Thames fall under 3 divisions of ownership, those being the Reigning Monarch and the city livery companies of dyers and vintners. This tradition goes back to the 12th century, when the Reigning Monarch held claim to all wild swans on the Thames, as in those days swans were a popular source of food for royalty. Then under a royal charter in the 15th century, the city livery companies were granted an equal share, and the ceremony of swan-upping began. This involves representatives of the 2 livery companies and the royal household rowing upriver, catching and marking all that year's signet in order to establish ownership. This annual event continues to this day in the 3rd week of July. Originally the birds were marked by cutting marks into their beaks, but now a band is placed around the bird's legs bearing a serial number. Swan-upping serves as a census as it records numbers of swans, and the birds are also checked for weight and general condition. The swan's diet consists mainly of green vegetation, and it's for this reason that the branches of some of the willow trees appear to have been neatly trimmed a foot or 2 above
Спасибо, что
water
нас
level.
смотрели, да. Да. Настя, скажи, подписывайтесь, пожалуйста, и будем с вами дружить. Скажи пока-пока.
To our right, we will pass the mooring pontoon and jetty at Windsor Racecourse, allowing the French Brothers fleets to transport racegoers to and from the course whenever